welcome back to What Are You Watching? I am Ben, your host, and this is a show where I bring on a guest where we then talk about what they have been watching. Today I am lucky enough to have Lola Kelly on. How are you doing, Lola?
I am doing amazing, Ben. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you so much for coming, and again, I'm just happy to have this. So, without further ado, what have you been watching?
Well, I came with a list of things. So one of the things that I have been watching, and by watching, I mean I watched it now more than once, is that new movie Spirited on Apple TV Plus with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. I am just head over heels for that movie, and that soundtrack has me in a complete chokehold. I listen to it all the time to the point where I'm like, I'm going to listen to it enough where I'm eventually going to hate this. But for right now, I am just enjoying so much of that soundtrack just over and over and over again.
I have to say, I love that movie too. Ever since
Good.
yeah, I love that movie. That song, Good Afternoon, is one of my favorite songs now.
It's so good. And that scene is so fun. That was one of those like that I listened to. It was one of those I sort of when I first started getting into that soundtrack, I kind of skipped over because there were like two tracks that I really liked and I kind of honed in on. And now I'm just like every single song I could listen to over and over again. And that song is so fun. I mean, especially that whole part of the movie where like Judy Dench randomly shows up. Like,
Yeah,
why?
right.
How? I don't know.
And they are really good together. Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds.
They do. They've got amazing chemistry. And I guess I shouldn't be surprised by that because they both are incredibly charming on screen. So I guess it's not a surprise that they were charming together on screen. But I think I was so impressed, especially with Ryan Reynolds' ability to sing and dance, because I mean, Will Ferrell, having been on SNL for so long and
Right.
all the roles that we've seen him in, we all kind of knew, I think, that at least he could sing, but dance is hard. And that's it. I remember seeing some of the videos that Ryan Reynolds posted after the movie came out, showing all of their rehearsals and talking about how they spent a year like making that movie and getting ready and doing, choreographing the dances and everything. And it just seemed like it was a lot of work. And it was such an impressive result, I think. Just personally, I think that.
Well, I think it's a nice twist on the Christmas Carol. What if you look at it, it's more of a sequel than an actual remake. Because, spoiler alert, Will Ferrell is Scrooge. And I think that's just brilliant.
It is. It's such a, you're right. It's like a totally different, it's a different take, but it also does kind of come off as like a sequel. And I didn't really even think about that. I just thought, like, what a great modern interpretation of this classic tale, A Christmas Carol. And you're totally right. It's like picking up sort of at the end of Scrooge's story, I
Right.
think, in just the best way.
Uh, yeah, that is going to be a regular holiday movie for me from now on. I don't know about you, but yeah.
Yeah. 100%. I think it's going to be, and I like to say that it would be every year I have to do like a rewatch around the holidays. I'll probably be watching not at the holidays. Like I have no problem admitting that. I'm one of those where every once in a while I just need a Christmas movie in the middle of the year and I will indulge. And this might be one of those movies I indulge in.
Well, they call it Christmas in July for some reason, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm willing to celebrate in July or May or April. I don't care.
Yeah. So, what's another thing you have been checking out lately?
Well, one of the things that I watch regularly still, and it's kind of strange because it's like the only network show that I still watch that isn't like a streaming thing is Law and Order SVU, and I
Okay.
watch a little bit of Law and Order Organized Crime as well. Um, but it's always kind of strange because I feel like I don't talk to anybody else that ever watches or talks about anything that they're watching that's on regular network TV. It's like all streaming and sort of prestige channels making the more like prestige TV. So that's kind of my one thing that I'm still watching and that I have been watching for like most of my life. And the
Oh, wow.
show started in like 1999 or 98 or something. So it's been a it's been a sort of constant that I've sort of come and gone from, but now back on at the moment.
It can't be all the same, like, cast members from back then, is it?
I mean, I think it might just be, well, Mariska Hargitay, who plays Olivia Benson, she's still on the show. She's one of maybe the only original from season one. Season two is when Ice-T joined the
Okay.
series, and so he's still on it. But I mean, it's on its like 23rd or 24th season right now. So
Wow.
it's like stood the test of time in a huge way. I mean, even the original, like the tentpole series, Law and Order, went away for a little while, and SVU has really kind of stuck it out. It's kind of impressive, honestly.
And I think I read somewhere that the original is coming back. Is that right?
It did come back, and
Oh,
so I think it's the second season back this year, and last year was its first, and the whole cast had sort of turned over. I mean, I think Sam Waterston he's still playing Jack McCoy, so he's one of he's hopped around, I think, to all of the series. And is still one of the sort of OGs on that series in particular. But Hugh Dancy is one of the main characters in the new seasons of Law and Order, and I haven't been keeping up too much with this second season. But
okay.
last season I thought he was great. He plays one of the ADAs
Hmm.
working at the courthouse, and it's a great character for him. I really enjoy it.
And your new, I don't want to say mystery, but there's a new case every week, right?
With Law and Order SVU, it is. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the interesting thing because Law and Order Organized Crime, which is the show that Christopher Maloney came when he came back to the Law and Order franchise, he came back on his own show that now comes on every week after SVU. And, after all of his time being on SVU, every once in a while, there are like crossover episodes with SVU and with the regular Law and Order, which are always great. But his show is different in that it's always organized crime tends to pick one storyline and it sticks with that storyline through an arc of episodes, be it like half the season or a third of the season or something
Oh,
like that. Which is great because they can kind of dig in to the stories and the characters and stuff a little bit more consistently, whereas SVU is still a new case every week. And I think that the regular Law and Order is too.
oh, wow. But I'm sure it's entertaining, right? Like, they make you laugh sometimes.
Well, the thing with SVU, and it's definitely entertaining still, for sure. And the nice thing about SVU and OC is having that sort of balance where SVU is sort of different every week. It's a new case. And it kind of, for those of us who have short attention spans, there are some advantages to that. But you get a nice
Mhm.
balance of that with OC kind of always picking up the storyline from the last episode and continuing it on for a little bit. But I do enjoy it. And, the nice thing about SVU is they really do seem to try and make it about the survivor's story. That they tend to not focus as much on like the detectives and the people, the main sort of
Okay.
characters like personal lives. They really do try to make it about whether it's something that's recently happened in real life, and the ripped from the headlines mentality that they tend to have. They do keep it entertaining, they keep it modern, and they really do try to kind of keep that focus on telling the story of a survivor.
Well, it sounds like, I don't know if you ever watched that show, that David Fillion show, Castle. Did you ever watch that?
I didn't. I'm kind of picky, I guess, when it comes to like some of these like police dramas. I mean, even all of the other Dick Wolf series that are on like Wednesday nights that are set in Chicago. I don't even watch that. I mean, I really am just like that's kind of my last holdout when it comes to the network TV stuff is like the Law and Order Thursday nights.
Makes sense. That show, and I know you don't watch it, but another show that's been coming back year after year is that show Grey's Anatomy. I'm
Yeah, I
sure.
was just gonna say, I feel like that's the only other one that has like stood the test of time so consistently. It's just been on for what seems like forever. It's crazy.
As long as people watch it, I'm glad they have it. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I mean, I think that's great because they have been able to keep, I mean, I think some of their original cast members, or maybe they kind of come and go. I'm not sure. I've never actually been a Grey's Anatomy fan, but I feel
Me
like
neither.
Ellen Pompeo may still have some involvement in the show. I'm not actually sure, but I guess it's named after her, so you would think that she's still on it. But
I think the
that's how detached I am from it. I don't even know.
I think the only one that I know for sure is not on it anymore is Catherine Heigl. But
Yeah. Well, and I want to say she has like her own series on some, I don't know if it's a streaming service or if it's a network show, but I feel like she's headlining her own show at this point. Um, so, and for all I know, they killed her character off. But again, that's the thing of me being so detached from it. I was always an ER girl, like when that was on in like the 90s, early 2000s, like my mom was a big ER fan. And so
gotcha.
I like eventually when I got old enough to kind of sit down and be able to sit down for an hour and watch a show with commercials, like she and I would watch that show together. And I feel like
Oh,
when Grey's
nice.
Anatomy came on, I was like, what is this new medical show? I'm not going to be cheating on my medical show. I will stick with mine. And then it got canceled and went away.
I'm a fan of House when that was
That was
on.
another one that I should have watched, and I bet one day I'll go back to that show and be like, why did I not watch this when it was on? That's not still on, right? Like that's not still
No,
new.
I think it ended 2013.
Okay,
So,
gotcha. So a while now.
around, Hugh Laurie on that show is one of the most iconic, in my opinion, one of the most iconic TV doctors ever because he just made it his own.
He really did. And like when you think about, these TV doctors, it's like there's especially when you think in like terms of Grey's Anatomy or ER, I mean like with ER, I feel like those they weren't quite as iconic, like how many people can even name one of the characters actually from ER at this point still, unless you're like in the middle of an actual rewatch.
Right.
But yeah, the fact that he really was, that he was the real thing with that show, and it's one of those that I've seen I've seen so many clips of it. I feel like I have a little bit of I've had some touch points with it, and it's become such a popular thing just in the culture. Who hasn't seen at least a clip of Hugh Laurie just being actually absolutely extraordinary in the role.
I mean, incredibly mean to some people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which brought, when it brings that kind of like humor like that, I get that he's kind of a jerk and you're probably not supposed to be cheering for him all the time, but when it's, any kind of like medical show that takes place in a hospital, there's always going to be that sort of heaviness that automatically comes with it. So,
Right.
a show that can bring in humor like that, even if it's just sometimes at the expense of other characters.
Yeah.
You got to bring the entertainment factor in there somewhere. And he was so good at that, like it was just that
Exactly.
entertaining that it just worked.
I can't forget when I finally realized he's not from America and he's British, and his accent totally threw me off, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like was it one of like the 101 Dalmatians movies, like one of the live
Yeah,
action ones that he was in? I remember being like,
him,
"Oh man, that
him,
guy's."
and the guy who plays Arthur Weasley in the Harry
That's
Potter
right.
movie.
Yeah, but I remember seeing Hugh Laurie in particular being like, "Oh, I had no idea that guy
Yeah.
wasn't an American. Good on him."
So, anything else you've been watching?
Well, I did. I mean, I feel like the show White Lotus was one that so many people watched,
Right.
which was so great. And because by the end of it, at least by the end of this season, it seemed like such a cultural phenomenon that like I just was constantly seeing it referenced on like TikTok and Instagram and
Yeah.
Twitter and just any other place you would ever come across a meme anywhere on the internet. And that made it really fun. Like my sort of niche on Twitter is like Star Wars, and I
Right.
don't get to really interact or participate in a lot of other fandoms because anytime I do, I'm like, what? I feel like my algorithm is like, why is the Star Wars person wandering into another fandom? But the fact that that show became such a phenomenon. At least especially by the time we got to season 2, it made it so fun to get to
Yeah.
actually like interact with some people and see how other people were interpreting the show and get to like kind of venture out of my own little fandom niche area.
Yeah, I still have to check that out. I hear nothing but good stuff about White Lotus, and the cast looks great. Or just say that, the cast looks great.
It's amazing. And the first, it's great because that first season was a totally different cast. And I came into the first season really late. I wasn't like fully on board right when that show was airing. I actually didn't get into it until after, I think it was the Emmys that aired. And I mean, that show won so many awards. I feel like Mike White was getting up there and accepting awards, and you were hearing the like theme music over and over again throughout the entire broadcast. And I was like, sometimes when it comes to award shows and when that kind of thing happens, it makes me like even less interested
Yeah.
in checking out whatever show is winning all of those awards constantly. But in this case, I just kind of got gradually more and more intrigued. And when I did finally sit and watch the first season, I think all of the new episodes were out already.
Oh,
So
wow.
I got to like binge through all of them right away, and I didn't have to
Nice.
wait to see what happened and how it happened. But with this season 2, kind of getting to follow it week by week, where everybody was guessing and so many articles are putting out their theories of how the whole thing is going to end, it just made the whole process so much more interactive and so much more fun in that way.
I guess the murder mystery is having a comeback lately with that and with Knives Out that's
Right?
coming out.
It's so great that we get sort of those clue like who done it mystery shows that have kind of gotten a little bit, I think, of an uptake. And you're right, like Glass Onion and Knives Out is like so fantastic. It's like when it comes to Clue, actually, there's a theater here in Chicago that is doing a stage production of Clue, and so I sat and watched the movie, rewatched the movie recently, and
Oh,
seeing the
wow.
play, then it was really fun. So it's great that how that sort of has it kind of comes and goes, I think, from the sort of general pop culture and what's popular, but the fact that it's sort of back and having a major comeback right now is so fun. I think even Wednesday on Netflix is sort of a mystery who done it type of vibe. I haven't finished watching that series, but that's kind of what I
Me
understand
neither.
what's coming.
I saw the first episode of that. It seems like they did a great job with that show.
It's
Wednesday.
visually striking, which is great. I'm really excited to sit and watch all of it. I tend to enjoy Tim Burton stuff just in general. I like his work and I like his style, and so this show appealed to me, I mean, right from the beginning. And I've always loved the character Wednesday Addams and the Addams family in general. I mean, there was like a musical in 2010 that
Oh,
Nathan
wow.
Lane and BB Newirth were Gomez and Morticia in the stage
Really?
production, that I think it got like panned. Like people did not like this show, which is really unfortunate. It is kind of a ridiculous show, but then the show got reworked and it went on tour and it had this crazy revival. And now I think a lot of like colleges and community theaters put that show on. So you still see it every now and then, but the soundtrack is great. The story is really funny. Adam's Family Values is one of my favorite movies of all time. I feel like that movie shaped so much of like my humor and how much I'm like much more into like sort of dark humor than anything else. And so the Adams Family has kind of just been this like constant thing in my life. So I'm excited to finally sit and finish the Wednesday show. Not to mention that show has gotten this like it went crazy viral on TikTok with there's like a school dance scene in the
Y-
show. And
Yeah,
so
that's what I
Wednesday's
hear.
doing, yeah, she's doing some like kind of bizarre dance sequence that Jenna Ortega actually choreographed herself. And it's just so funny and crazy and weird and awesome. And so the fact that it like blew up on TikTok, I'm like, now this show's going to get, I think, even more eyes on it eventually.
Did you know it had to have already been renewed for season two? Right? I mean, had to, right?
I haven't heard anything, but I mean, that could very well be the case. I wouldn't be, I would really like to have like a win for Tim Burton. I feel like so many of the things that he's done in like the last 10 years have just not been, have not sort of given any kind of great result in terms of like the box office and just general reception. So I'm sort of cheering for him for this one and hoping that it works out. And Jenna Ortega seems to be great in the role. So hopefully it continues on.
I'm trying to think what was the last really good Tim Burton movie.
You know, I feel like I'm one of the few people that enjoyed Miss Peregrine. I don't even remember what the full title of it is. I remember loving that book, and then
Okay.
hearing that Ava Green was going to be playing the titular role, and I
Right.
absolutely love that actress. So I was really excited for that, and I enjoyed the movie. I rewatched it recently. I was like, oh yeah, remember when that movie came out and nobody liked it, nobody saw it, but I enjoyed it.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you liked it. I haven't seen it, but I'll make it a point to see it.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of I think it's streaming somewhere. I want to say maybe it actually might be on Netflix now that I think about it. There might be like a Tim Burton collection somewhere on one of the streaming services.
I think my favorite Tim Burton movie, I know it's cliche, but I don't care. It's like any like Batman. I think that's the
Oh.
perfect blend of Burton and DC for me. And I think it's well done.
I think it was probably coming up on like 10 years ago that I sat down and like I was like I'm going to watch all the Batman movies. Every single I hadn't I'd seen some of them like especially the Dark Knight trilogy that Chris
Right.
Nolan had done, but I went back and rewatched all of them and that was I think one was that the George Clooney one that he did?
No,
Who
it
did
was the first Michael Keaton, that person.
Okay, that's right. Got it. Was that the only Batman movie that he did?
No, he did that and he did Batman Returns with
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer and Danny DeVito
Got
as a
it.
penguin.
Good times. Yeah, I couldn't name the directors of any of the other ones, but yeah, he's got an interesting style, you know. I thought for sure when you said like I've got my favorite cliche Tim Burton movie, you were going to say Nightmare Before Christmas. So you went a different direction than I was expecting.
Well, eh, I don't consider that a Burton movie because he didn't direct it.
Yeah, wasn't he like he was like a producer or something though, wasn't he?
Yeah, he might maybe wrote it, but I don't. That's not him, so I don't consider that his movie.
Fair
Maybe
enough.
I should. So, anything else?
Um, in terms of what I'm watching, that's kind of been it. I mean, like this is the time of year where I'm all about like Christmas movies in general, so it's been a lot of just kind of what's been playing on TV, which I feel like Christmas Vacation is just on 24/7. It's like the new Christmas Story. I feel like it's on cable all the time. So that's been on quite a bit in my household, and that's one that's like kind of quoted year round and has been since like my childhood. So I every even though it's on all the time, I still watch it all the time and still love it.
Are you a big Home Alone fan?
I love the Home Alone movies. That's another one that I'm like, I feel like Disney Plus got their hands on the Home Alone movies, and
Yeah.
maybe they're just not on TV as much anymore. I don't feel like I see them on TV as much anymore, but I have watched them both a few times now, just on Disney Plus, which is nice because I'm like, now you can avoid commercials, which is great.
I get, yeah. Those are some of my earliest movie theater memories going to the first one. So,
Really, the first Home Alone movie?
yeah.
That's awesome. That's was that
That
like
and
1990 something?
1990. Yeah,
Okay,
1990. I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's one of. Eh, no, that's impossible. I was going to say that and E.T., but I wasn't born yet when E.T. came out.
gotcha.
So,
Yeah, those Home Alone movies are fun. I mean, I guess I haven't seen. I probably saw the third one at some point, but after that, I've never seen the others. A friend of mine, we went and did a movie trivia event, and it was just Home Alone, and
oh,
so
yeah.
a lot of it
Oh,
focused on Home Alone 1 and 2, which is great. We did really well. It was really fun, but the very last like bonus wager whatever question was what's the name of the kid in the third Home Alone movie, and my sister and I were there and we were just like, well shit, we have no idea. And my friend who I think hadn't seen lost in New York at that point, which is crazy. I'm like, how did you miss that in pop culture? But she knew weirdly that the kid's name was Alex. And so we got like, I think we won first place maybe. Like we just recently spent the gift card. This is a couple years ago that we
Oh,
won it because it was
wow.
pre-COVID. But we went back to that bar and spent the gift card finally. So props to my friend Liz, who knew that the kid's name was Alex in Home Alone 3.
The only positive thing I could name about that movie is that the janitor from Scrubs had a minor cameo in that movie.
Okay. Good
Neil
to know.
Flynn.
I just remember like the monster truck from that movie. I don't
Yeah,
remember like anything else about it.
it's not good. It's not good. That's
No,
why we
I
read
bet
the
it's
movie.
not.
I mean, they should have stuck with the second one, but hey, it's a franchise, and what do franchises do? They make money, right?
Right? Exactly. They're going to keep doing it because that's what Disney does. I mean, when did I feel like that fifth one came out sometime in the last. That was like one of those things that Disney Plus was so proud of. They're like, we got the next Home Alone movie.
Oh,
Like, nobody asked for that.
I think it was last year, and I haven't seen it, but I heard nothing but like horrible things about it.
Yeah. Nothing appealing for me on that one, I don't think. And but it's aimed at a different audience. You know, that movie's probably not aimed at you and me. That movie's
Right.
aimed at younger kids. It's not for us, and that's totally fine. Um, but I do remember. I mean, speaking of being aimed at younger kids, like I do remember when Schitt's Creek was airing on
Okay.
Netflix, and people were like, "Oh my God, did you know that the mom in Schitt's Creek is also the mom in Home Alone?" And like Gen Z's minds were just blown, and I was like, "Oh my God." Oh my God. I'm like, that's they're just now like they're just realizing it. They didn't know that wasn't like one of the appeals of watching that show was, oh, it's Catherine O'Hara. People are just like, oh, it's the mom from Home Alone. It's
Right.
so funny to me. It's wild.
And I believe, I haven't seen all of his movies, but I believe she's a big recurring cast member in Christopher Guest movies. Am I right about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think she's not in all of them, but yeah, I think you're right that she's a frequent collaborator with him.
Her and Eugene Levy, I believe. I
Yeah.
believe they were together.
And
Yeah.
I think they met in like I don't know if it was Second City or the Groundlings or some comedy troupe. I think somewhere in Canada. I want it must have been Second City that they met doing that. So the fact that they've been collaborating, I think, together for a very, very, very
Yeah.
long time. Like that's so fun that like Eugene Levy and his son were both involved in that show, and I'm sure she's been in their lives for like at least like Dan's whole life. So it's that was a really fun show to watch. That whole cast had such great chemistry.
That's her show that I missed. I gotta go watch it.
Yes, it's totally binge worthy. I will say this about the first episode because I feel like lots of people don't like the first episode, and that show just like doesn't draw them in with its first few. You gotta like push through it. Like
Okay.
the Catherine O'Hara character spends a lot of the first episode just like frantically screaming, and it's a little bit off-putting. I 100% understand that, but it's totally worth sticking with it because that show really earned every season renewal that it got because it was just that good.
Was it always on Netflix?
Yes, I think. Well, actually, no. Maybe it was somewhere else, airing on some Canadian
Okay.
TV station because I feel like that was maybe one of those at some point before Netflix got the final season. It came out somewhere else. And I was like, well, I can wait until season 3 comes out or season whatever comes out on Netflix, or I can buy it ahead of time if I want to watch it now. And I was that devoted at that time that I didn't want to wait. And I actually did purchase, I think, the final season so I could watch it ahead of time. I want to say, yeah, it did air somewhere else first.
I feel like it's a Canadian show.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Or sometimes all the best comedies come from Canada. Have you heard of the show Kim's Convenience?
I've heard of it. That's the sort of show that's focused on like an Asian family, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've heard of it. I haven't watched it yet.
I watched it a couple months ago. It's so funny.
Really? Okay, so and that's a sort of Canadian made show. Did
Yeah,
it air on one of the networks here in the States?
I think it's on Netflix. No,
Oh,
it
okay.
didn't air here.
Got
It's
it.
with Shang-Chi himself singing Blue. That's where he got started.
Yeah, and I think it was one of the pilots from The Mandalorian, right? That he was in that show. I remember
Yes,
people being
yes,
really
yes, yes.
excited. That was when I feel like I first was hearing a lot about that show, where people were just like,
Right,
"Oh yeah,
right.
this one actor from Mandalorian is also in this show."
Who came back a few times on Mandalorian, I believe, right?
He did, yeah, and I'm sure he'll be back again. It seems like he's one of those characters that'll just pop in every now and then, him and Dave Filoni playing pilots.
And I believe he's going to be in the Last Airbender live action show.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that one's out of my purview. I haven't dove into that fandom, but they are an active bunch, so I'm sure they're very
Yeah, yes,
excited.
they are. They're, well, how you call it? They're small but loud. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. They but that's one of those where I feel like there's a lot of like overlap with Star Wars.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are kind of talking about both and I'm like, yeah, I see those references every now and again and it makes me pretty certain that I would enjoy all of that the last airbender content if I actually gave it a chance and watched it, but I only have time for so many fandoms. I can only be obsessed with so many things at one time, I got to pick and choose my battles.
Well, I know you're a Star Wars fandom person, but what other fandoms are you in?
It's really kind of just that. Like that's one of those where it Star Wars kind of took over my life in like 2014 and it just did not ever let go. So I've come and gone from other fandoms. I mean, like I was really into Harry Potter for a long time, not so much anymore. I was really into that BBC Sherlock show that Benedict
Oh, right.
Cumberbatch was in. That was a big one for me too for a while. But yeah, that it for the recent as far as like kind of the last 5-ish years, it's pretty much been like wholeheartedly Star Wars that whole time.
What show are you looking out forward to coming soon? Like,
Oh,
what?
I'm very excited for Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Are you talking about just Star Wars stuff?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I'm very pumped for the Ahsoka series. I'm really hoping that we get some news or a trailer or something at Star Wars Celebration London. Um, so I've got my fingers crossed for that. But the fact that that's like going to be picking up the Star Wars Rebels story and Hera's going to be in it, and she's like one of my favorite Star Wars characters of all time, and I absolutely am just head over heels forever for Star Wars Rebels. That was the show that like that was airing. That was my Star Wars. That was like,
Right.
it wasn't the movies, it wasn't the books. It was like, it was Star Wars Rebels wholeheartedly for me for a long time. And I've obviously expanded from there, but now the High Republic is like my favorite thing in Star Wars. And it's all books and comics now.
Do you think they will ever make a High Republic movie or show?
I bet they would. I mean, the Acolyte is supposed to be set at the end
Right.
of the High Republic era, but I would be willing to bet maybe someday they'll dive in because I think that that method of going outside of the Skywalker saga time period is a really smart idea.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hoping that the Acolyte does really well and they maybe get that idea that they can do a really good job and go outside of the Skywalker saga and that they'll do more of that eventually. But I would love to see that. I would love to see even animated or live action High Republic content. I'm all in.
Yeah, I mean, ain't anything new. It's been a moment since we had something brand new with no connection to anything from the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really appealing. And it might be one of the reasons I sort of enjoy the High Republic as much as I do, is it's just got no connection whatsoever to like, I mean, and obviously it's in the same universe, so it's got that connection, but
Right.
beyond
No,
that, it's all these new characters and they're all great. And it's just so fascinating getting to watch the story sort of unravel as, we're doing the same thing that we did with the trilogy movies where they started in the middle and now we're back 150 years before the phase one stories took place. And eventually I think we'll go back and finish out the story in phase three. But
right.
overall, it really is a solid bunch of content coming out of the High Republic.
And we don't, how do I put this nicely? We don't have any of the baggage that we
Correct.
had with
I think that's a good
Christmas,
word. That's a good word. And I don't think it's mean to say that.
right.
I think that's a perfect term for it actually, baggage.
Yeah. And we're not going to get into it, but it has quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's fair.
Um, yeah. I'm talking about Christmas. Were you a fan of the Santa Claus movies? And if you were, did you see the new Disney Channel Plus show that just finished?
I liked the first one and I have it on I'm sure I have a DVD of it around here somewhere. I don't think I ever saw any of the sequels
Okay.
and I never really had any interest and at this point I'm like I have no interest in supporting Tim Burton or
Mm,
not Tim Burton, Jesus, Tim Allen in anything he does,
right.
so I won't be watching it, but
Okay.
I would be curious. I'm like, have you seen it? I would be curious to hear like how it sort of compares to the original at least because the original is great, I love that movie.
And yeah, and that's good. I mean, without going into it, it doesn't stray too much out of the mark. It's very predictable. If you knew, if you saw the trailer, you'll probably figure out how it's going to end and you'll figure everything out. But
Got it.
while that does happen, it's still a very nice and heartwarming story.
Okay.
So,
Good to know. So I
yeah,
it's
take with that what you want.
yeah, yeah. Sounds like one that I could maybe skip, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, well, if there's really nothing else, we could wrap up. Thank you so much for coming, and please tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ben. It's rare that I get invited to talk about anything that isn't Star Wars, so I
Right.
really appreciate the invite and the opportunity. This was a lot of fun. If people want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is at shutup_Laura. I'm also now on Hive. There seems to be a lot of excitement about the new social media platform Hive, and I'm at shutup Laura there because they don't do characters in their usernames. But everywhere else, I'm shutup_Laura, including on Instagram. And then the show that I host with my friend Alice, our podcast is called Forced Toast, a Star Wars happy hour. She and I drink wine and talk about Star Wars. And then I host a show with John Roca on his YouTube channel called The Jedi Way, which is again about Star Wars because why not?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming, and yeah, and you guys can follow me right here on this channel. I'll be back, and have a good one. And if I don't see you, happy holidays, everyone. Have a good one. Bye.